All right. Hi, everyone. Hopefully this finds you well. This is a follow-up meeting on construction loans. I sat down with Nate before and we had a conversation just about what a construction loan is, kind of who it's for, how you deploy it. So I think today it'd be good to kind of go through the actual process of a construction loan. You found the right home or you found what you want to invest your future into. Now what? Nate, if you could, it'd be great if you could kind of walk us through the actual, walk the walk of a construction loan.
Absolutely. Thanks, Matt. So the first step is obviously get your contract in. Once your contract's accepted, then you kind of are in a big rush. So, you should be working with the realtor that has a good inspector. I hate calling just random companies and bringing their inspector in. So if they don't have a recommendation, or if you're a realtor listening to this and you don't have a recommendation, reach out to Matt or I. We'll send you one of the best guys out there. He's awesome. So that guy comes in. I would also have a contractor you trust. So someone that you've worked with in the past, either a general contractor or, handyman could even be there if that's all you have. If that's all you have, and be there with the inspector. And at that time, they can go through the electrical and the plumbing, making sure that, there aren't any major things, because really those trades, electrical, plumbing, HVAC,
the big ones,
those are going to be usually 60% of your total budget. If there's not major issues and you can just reuse existing, you're going to save a lot of money and be able to add more to your design. So that is a big deal. And two, that person, whether it's the handyman or even Mark, who's our inspector, he can help give you ballpark budget on costs. He's done this. That's all he does. He knows how much it's going to cost to fix this item or that item. So those guys can help you say, hey, you got to walk away from this deal. It's not going to work. Or, hey, maybe you need a little bit more money, or actually you got a gem here. So move forward and let's, get rolling.
Interesting. So it sounds to me like going through a conventional home purchase or condo purchase where you have your inspection, you have your attorney review period where you're just trying to see everything that you can see. Once you get past that point, you feel relatively good that you're going to move forward on this investment. You have a rough idea of what the costs are going to be. I'm assuming that just like any other, construction project, you've got to pull permits and get architect designs in some cases. Is all that baked into your pre-closing time?
Yeah. So I'd say the biggest thing is, let's, for instance, say your budget's 500,000, you're buying the land for 300. So, or the current house is 300,000. So your budget then is $200,000. And you do need to consider some of those additional costs like architecture fees, permit fees, and your draw fees into that 200,000. And then work your way backwards. So that way, when you have that, in that general contractor there, say like, hey, our must-haves are kitchen, master bath, all new flooring, bedrooms, painted, a new deck outside, new fence around. Are these must-haves in that 200,000? And also, if it's a Fannie Mae loan, there's also must-haves that Fannie Mae has that are always weird. Like if the sidewalk or if the steps are concrete and cracked, you're going to have to replace those. So there's these weird things there. So you got to be cognizant of those items that you could just patch if you were doing a regular loan. You're going to probably have to replace the Fannie Mae. So you definitely need to work your way backwards on that budget and say, what things can we live with and what things can we not live, we can't live without. If those items that you can't live without are too much, then you really need to walk away from the loan, because the last thing you want to be is, from a realtor standpoint or a GC or even the owner, is unhappy with what you're going to be ending up living with in the house. Because if you're unhappy, then you're going to end up wanting to move fairly quickly, or it doesn't work for your family, or you have a half rehabbed house and then it doesn't appraise correctly. All of those things need to come into consideration.
And I would think that's a big part of this, right? Is ultimately the end goal is that appraisal, like we talked about before. So, all of this, whatever you have to do to get there, you have to hit that appraised number at the end, right?
Yeah. So let's say you got your budget set, no major issues, everything's good. As soon as you're into attorney review and you're done with attorney review and you know that you're moving forward, seems like the lender's going the right direction, they don't say there's any issues, I would hire an architect and start your plans. So when you write your contract, you need to add at least 2 additional visits into the house. One, because you might need to get a plumbing scope done if it's not at the same time. And the second one would be having the architect do a walkthrough, do all the measurements, and making sure that they can start the plans. Because a lot of people are kind of jerks, especially nowadays with coronavirus, trying to get in the house more times. And maybe you can do it virtually with the architect, but at the end of the day, unless they already have, VHT layouts done, they're going to need to get in that house and do measurements so that they can get the permitting process done. Because if you wait until after you close to hire an architect and do the permitting, you're probably going to be 2 months out. It's going to delay you getting to move in. And on top of that, I highly recommend waiting to move in.
Yeah. Give yourself time.
Especially if you have kids, do not live through construction. It's a huge strain on your relationships with your kids and your wife, your family. Don't do it. People try it all the time, and inevitably they hate the entire construction process. They're miserable.
Right. Yeah. And that's not what you want. I mean, even a small rehab project can be miserable depending on the circumstances.
The other thing is it just takes way more time. Like you're probably doubling the amount of time. If you're getting your permits and the contractors all lined up, what would be, say it's $100,000, you're doing new kitchen floors, paint, mostly cosmetic, very little movement of walls, then you should be in 3 months. But if you're going to live through that, you're probably going to be into 6 because there's going to be days you don't want the contractor there.
Right. Everything gets
pushed. They have to cover everything in your house every time they work. It's going to be super dusty. Your kids are going to be annoyed. It's just not a good process.
Got it. So you need to make time. You need to have the resources aligned. You need to have a pretty clear sight on budget and appraised value at the end. How do you, obviously you got this bulk of money from the bank, predicting the future value of an asset that is yet to exist. So I'm assuming that you have some responsibility to report back on what you're doing, the updates that are happening, all that good stuff. How does that look, and what does that look like?
Yeah, so depending on the loan type, some of them require a consultant. So the bank actually hires a consultant, and that's all they do is build these type of budgets out, tell you what the value is, and then they come in and they do an inspection. So the general contractor will say, hey, we're done with demo. We've framed up all the walls and we have drywall on. So the inspector will come out, make sure all those things are in. The homeowner has to sign off on an authorization form. And then the inspector comes through, walks the house. If everything there is done, they sign off on it. And then they send you a check, or they send a check to the GC to pay for everything that's already been done. And they will front the general contractor 50% of materials, just so that they're not deep out of pockets, especially in some of the bigger projects. The other thing that I actually didn't mention was that there's a little trick of the trade with the city. So when you close, you actually apply for a permit that's called a repair replacement permit. You need an electrician to sign off on it. And what they're doing is you're repairing or replacing drywall or stucco in the house. And then that allows you to actually demo the walls you need to demo. And it allows the architect, your plumber, your electrician, everyone to get in and actually give you like a true budget number, so that you know, oh crap, we're way over. And if you're way over early on before the first inspection, they can revise the entire budget, send that to the appraiser to make sure, hey, we had to do these revisions. Are we still good in terms of what our appraised value is?
Before you always want to be very far down the pike.
Yeah.
Got it. Very cool. So it seems, I mean, again, we talked about how approachable this is depending on what you're trying to accomplish. It seems like it's pretty well regulated and monitored throughout the process in terms of upgrades and additions you're making. And then the ultimate end goal, again, is just to appraise out and have the future home that you thought you would have. Are there any other surprises or anything else that people should be aware of?
Yeah, I think we briefly spoke about it, but there will be that 20% construction contingency. I will tell everyone, as soon as you start demoing walls and getting inside a house, you're going to want to spend more money. It's just the inevitable thing is you're going to say, well, I'm never going to do this again. So upgrade the tile, upgrade these things, move this wall around. So don't really count on that contingency to be available for things that you want, because it's Chicago. Almost everything on the north side in the desirable neighborhoods was built between 1893 and 1918. So right before World War I. So there's old stuff.
There's going to be some work.
Yeah, there's definitely going to be work done. And things that you may not think are going to be very expensive could be very expensive. So I always say shop around as much as you can with multiple contractors. Just keep in mind, like if a plumbing or an electrical bid is really cheap, those always make me nervous, because there's a reason they're really cheap. compared to everyone else. I would usually sometimes go with the middle bid, or you can negotiate if you have a contractor that you trust, or your general contractor trusts, or your realtor trusts. Just bring them down. Like, people are pretty competitive with numbers right now. It's not the explosion of building that we had a few years ago. They'd be willing to do it and say, hey, and you could even present them with it. Just like, here's the other bid. You can cross up the name of the company and say, hey, here's the other bid. If you can match that, then you can have it. And a lot of guys will say, you know what, that's fine. I need the work. I'm going to match it. And then you have someone you trust, because I've had electricians that were half of what other guys were, and they took 3 times longer. So then that delays the rest of construction.
Everybody.
Puts your family out of the house. You're paying rent longer. You're paying utilities more. Like, you end up spending just as much as you did for the other guy and extras. So keep that in mind.
Yeah.
And then the last thing is, once you're done with all the construction, the appraiser will come back out. Now, the appraiser isn't going to reappraise on the new value. So let's say you're in a dip in the market like we are right now, but you started construction 6 months ago. They actually still have to appraise it on what happened 6 months ago, because
so whenever you started the project.
Yep. So they don't reappraise it really. What they say is, was everything done that you promised was going to get done? Were there any upgrades that actually added value to the house so that they can bring that to the table? Which I had a client do that, where they paid for hardy board on the outside of their house out of pocket. They built this huge deck on the back, and the guy was like, whoa, that wasn't on there. And I was like, yeah, they paid out of pocket. And he goes, well, that just added another $50,000 to this appraisal. So those are good things for your clients to know.
Yeah. Fantastic.
And I'd say the last thing is, if you've ever thought about wanting to do it, I highly recommend it. It's the greatest way. If you pay for something that's done, you're overpaying, because you're paying that general contractor or that developer's fees that their margins are to be around as a company. So because you're paying that margin, you're usually moving in with 0 equity. Whereas if you do this construction, you're going to immediately have equity in your house. And that's the best way to build long-term wealth, is having equity in these houses. And then it allows you to, if you want to expand your real estate portfolio, you can cash out, refi your house, and use that for the next place that you want to buy. So as long as you have good people that you can consult with, contractors that you trust, it's a really great way to go out there and have value in your house. And, a quick story of mine, Matt, I know we're going a little long here, but I've been looking for lake houses with another friend family of ours for a while. And we found one. It was actually a foreclosure. We went in and bought it at $240,000. Well, because it was a foreclosure and it was weird, the bank's disclosure said that there was termite damage as well as water damage in the basement, and then the roof was trashed.
So I went in with my inspector, a lot of work.
Brought in my roof guy. We went through it, and they're like, you're missing like 5 shingles. This is actually dry rot, because all the sealing around the water, around the windows and doors had failed. There's no termites here. There's nothing. But it had scared everyone else away. So we got the house for $240. It appraised at like $310 before we touched it. And then my business partner and I, we did a lot of sweat equity, brought our guys in, actually traded weeks at the house. So guys got to use it in the summer, our contractors, which they loved, and did the entire gut rehab of the place for $80,000. And then it appraised at $480,000. So we immediately turned that around so quickly. And then we also used it as a rental property. So we were able to write off a lot of those expenses as rentals, because we rented on Airbnb. Weekends were not there, which covers our mortgage and our taxes and everything. So if you're ever thinking about, I can't afford a second house, use that as really a cash flow, and use it when when it's available, and you kind of create that asset that continues to allow you to be, long-term wealth there.
That's the whole side of this that I think a lot of people would like to engage with more, that maybe they're uncomfortable with, is there is the idea of real estate for your home. We all need to live somewhere, but there is the financial side of it as well, leveraging real estate as a tool to build your wealth. And I think if you can, like you said, establish immediate equity in a home, I can't think of another way to do that other than this approach. It's pretty fantastic. So I thank you again for sitting down and talking about this today, Nate. I think hopefully this was a good conversation for everybody, just on what this process looks like, sort of the value that you can get both in terms of in the home and in terms of your financial side of things with using this loan type. If you have any additional questions, I know Nate would be happy to answer them, and certainly I'm happy to answer anytime. Take care. Thanks, Nate.
Yep. Thanks, Matt.